In season 5 of The Chosen, something changed. The scenes were darker, the emotions deeper, and the pressure heavier than ever before. And then it happened, he stopped filming. Not because of a line forgotten or a scheduled delay, but because the pain became too real. For millions, he's the face of Jesus. But for Jonathan Roumie, that role is becoming too much to bear. And what he revealed next will leave you shaken. There's a moment few people knew about until recently. A moment on set where Jonathan Roumie, the man millions recognize as Jesus in The Chosen, had to stop. Not out of fatigue, not because of a camera issue, but because something inside him cracked. Season 5 wasn't supposed to break him. He had already walked on water, multiplied loaves, delivered the Sermon on the Mount, and cried in front of the tomb of Lazarus. But now, as the story closes in on Jesus' final hours, Gethsemane, betrayal, crucifixion, the line between the character and the man portraying him has vanished. And the emotional toll is suffocating. Jonathan has admitted it this season is different. It's darker, heavier, and more spiritually intense than anything he's ever faced. The pressure isn't just professional, it's soul deep. He's not just stepping into a role anymore. He's stepping into suffering. He's not just wearing a costume. He's carrying a cross, and it's starting to crush him. He confessed in a recent interview that during one of the sacred scenes, something inside him gave out. His chest tightened, his mind froze, and he couldn't breathe. He looked around the set and realized he wasn't acting anymore. He was unraveling. He turned to Jenkins and whispered words no one expected. I need to stop. I can't keep going right now. This wasn't drama. It wasn't staged. It was a man spiritually exhausted, emotionally depleted, and on the edge of collapse. And that single moment, quiet, trembling honesty, is a window into what Jonathan Roumie has been carrying for years. From season 1, the role of Jesus has come with reverence and responsibility. But now, in season 5, that responsibility has transformed into something nearly unbearable. Jonathan said he feels it every time he steps on set, like a weight in his chest that won't let him breathe. Like eyes watching not just his performance, but his soul. And the worst part, he's started to believe he's not enough. I don't feel worthy, he said quietly in one interview. I look at the words I'm speaking, and I wonder how can I be the one to say this? That doubt, that haunting sense of spiritual inadequacy, is not just passing. It's growing. With every scene that gets closer to the cross, the pressure grows heavier. And behind the scenes, Jonathan Roumie is quietly breaking under it. He described one day on set filming a scene of Jesus in deep prayer, where the silence was so thick it felt holy. But Jonathan didn't feel holy. He felt hollow. He said, the moment the director called to action, he could barely move. He mouthed the words of the scene, but his hands were shaking. His eyes filled with tears, not because the script called for them, but because he couldn't hold back what was happening inside. It was like I wasn't even there, he said. Like something had taken over, and all I could do was stand there and cry. That's when production had to stop. Jenkins called a break, not knowing if Jonathan would be able to return that day. The cast and crew stepped back. No one spoke. No one moved. Because they knew it wasn't just a tough day at work, it was a breakdown. Jonathan sat in silence for nearly an hour, staring at the ground, still dressed as Jesus, still holding the weight of a scene he couldn't finish. And when he finally stood up, he didn't say anything. He just walked away. And that, right there, is what most people never see. We watch the miracles. We feel the emotions. We're inspired by every line spoken on screen. But we don't see the man behind the words, the one who goes home after filming and sits in the dark, trying to find peace. Jonathan has said that some days, after filming, he can't even speak. His body feels heavy, his heart feels bruised, and the silence follows him, even off the set. He doesn't turn on music, he doesn't talk to friends, he just sits emotionally paralyzed. And yet, through all of this, he continues. He shows up again and again, because he knows what this role means to people. He sees the letters, he hears the stories of lives changed, hearts moved, faith reignited. But what no one expected was how much this role would change him and how much it would cost him. Because what Jonathan is doing is no longer just acting, it's spiritual warfare. And he's fighting battles we can't see. The breakdown Jonathan experienced on set wasn't a one-time moment, it was a warning sign. A glimpse into a deeper struggle that's been quietly unfolding behind the scenes of The Chosen. And the truth is, this role is draining him in ways no one expected. He's not just memorizing lines anymore, he's carrying emotional wounds that keep reopening with every scene. And as the story moves toward the betrayal of Jesus, Jonathan has admitted that he can feel something dark creeping into his spirit. Not evil, not fear, but something heavier, spiritual exhaustion. The kind that doesn't go away with rest or sleep. The kind that lingers in the soul. He called it a weight behind the eyes, something that follows him from the set to the silence of his home. And in those silent hours, he's started asking himself hard questions. Can I really do this? Am I strong enough to carry this to the end? The truth is, he's not sure anymore. It's not just the subject matter. It's the responsibility. Jonathan has become the face of Jesus for millions. In homes, churches, hospitals, prisons, people see him and feel hope. They pray while watching his scenes. They cry as he delivers the Beatitudes or comforts the broken. They write to him saying his voice helped them find faith again. And all of that matters to him deeply. But it also adds pressure no one could have prepared him for, because when you step into the most sacred story ever told, and millions of hearts are tied to your performance, every word becomes a prayer, and every moment feels eternal. And if you start to feel like you're not worthy of that, it's like a crack forms in your soul. And Jonathan has confessed. Those cracks are getting harder to hide. He said the moment that broke him wasn't the most dramatic scene. It wasn't the crucifixion or the betrayal. It was a quiet scene, a moment of stillness. Jesus sitting alone, reflecting, praying. And as Jonathan sat there, the weight of everything suddenly rushed in. It was like the sorrow of the character, fused with his own personal doubts, and he couldn't separate them. He wasn't just portraying Jesus' loneliness, he was feeling his own. And in that silence, he realized something devastating. This role is changing me in ways I can't control. He didn't say that with pride, he said it with fear. Because while the world praises him, he often feels like he's unraveling inside, and no one sees it. Not fully. Jonathan has always been honest about his faith. He prays before filming, he prepares spiritually before key scenes. But this season, the preparation hasn't been enough. He said that before filming the Garden of Gethsemane scene, he felt disturbed for days. He couldn't sleep. He felt sick. Not physically, but spiritually, as if stepping into that sacred pain was demanding something from his soul that he wasn't ready to give. And when the cameras rolled, something terrifying happened. He started to feel lost, like he was in too deep, like he had touched something so sacred, so filled with sorrow, that it left him shaken long after the scene ended. That night, he didn't speak to anyone. He drove home in silence and cried until he couldn't cry anymore. He says it's not just about sadness, it's something more, something harder to explain. A sense that he's walking a path that's too holy for human feet, that he's speaking words that don't belong to him. And every time he finishes a scene, there's this Ica whisper that says, "You're not enough for this. Someone else could have done it better." And yet, he still shows up, still puts on the robe, still delivers every line with trembling honesty. But the truth is, he's not just acting anymore. He's surrendering. Every day, piece by piece, he's giving himself to this story. And that surrender comes at a cost. His friends and crew have noticed. They say he's quieter now, more distant between scenes. He doesn't joke like he used to. He walks off set slowly, often looking down, deep in thought. Some days, he doesn't even remove his costume right away. He just sits in it, like the weight of the character won't let go. One crew member described a moment after a particularly heavy scene where Jonathan walked away, sat under a tree, and stayed there alone for almost an hour. Not speaking, not moving, just sitting. And when someone approached to check on him, he simply said, "I'm not ready to come back yet." That wasn't about physical exhaustion. It was about spiritual collapse. And this collapse is slow, quiet, and terrifying. Because it's not dramatic like a fall, it's more like a fading, a slow erosion of emotional strength. Jonathan said that sometimes after filming, he doesn't even feel like himself. He'll look in the mirror and feel disconnected, like the man staring back isn't really there. That's the part no one talks about. The disconnection, the emotional toll of carrying a sacred role for so long that you start to forget where the character ends and you begin. He said, "Sometimes I wonder if I've given too much of myself away." And that sentence, that confession, reveals the fragile place he's in right now. But he keeps going. He keeps filming. He keeps surrendering. Because he believes the story matters. Because he knows it's bigger than him. But the truth is, The Chosen Season 5 is taking a toll. A quiet, invisible toll. And Jonathan Roumie is feeling every moment of it. But what many fans don't realize is how deep the emotional cost really runs for Jonathan. Season 5 of The Chosen didn't just test him physically, it began to unravel parts of him emotionally. The betrayal of Jesus by Judas, the fear and desperation in the Garden of Gethsemane, the heaviness of knowing what's to come while still having to look into the eyes of the disciples with love. These aren't just words on a script. Jonathan had to live these moments, breathe them in, and let them settle in his soul. Every single expression had to be drawn from a place of truth. And when you spend your days immersed in scenes of grief, pain, and spiritual warfare, it changes you. Jonathan has said it before, that playing Jesus is the most beautiful but emotionally exhausting thing he's ever done. But this season pushed it further than he ever expected. During the garden scene, something happened. As he knelt there, sweating, praying, crying, the cameras were rolling, but he wasn't acting anymore. That cry came from deep within him. That wasn't the script. That was real anguish. Something had cracked open inside him. And once it was open, it couldn't be shut again. After that, cast and crew started noticing subtle changes in Jonathan. He wasn't laughing as much between takes. He spent more time alone, often walking off set in silence, needing space. And it wasn't about fame or pressure or fans, it was the weight of the character. The burden of carrying a role that demands you embody the Son of God, knowing how many people are looking to The Chosen not just for entertainment, but for comfort, for hope, for healing. That burden doesn't end when the director yells cut. It stays with you, it follows you home. And in Jonathan's case, it started to follow him into his own prayers, his own thoughts. He has shared that sometimes after intense filming days, he'd lie in bed and just weep, not from sadness, but from the emotional flood that playing Jesus unleashed in him. He wasn't pretending. He was entering into pain, betrayal, and divine love in a way that few actors ever do. And season 5, it broke past the emotional threshold. For the first time since The Chosen began, Jonathan had to pause filming not because of schedule conflicts, but because his soul needed time to breathe again. And behind the scenes, the team knew. Jenkins himself was concerned. He could see Jonathan wasn't just tired, he was carrying something. The kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises but leaves marks on the heart. Even crew members who had been with Jonathan for years noticed the shift. He's giving everything, one said. But I think it's costing him more than we realize. And when the time came to shoot the trials, the beatings, the silence before the crucifixion, Jonathan's body showed the signs. His eyes weren't just read from makeup or lighting. They were tired, raw, real. He was living the sorrow of Christ. And as fans, we saw that depth and called it brilliant acting. But what if it was something more? What if the pain we witnessed on screen wasn't crafted but channeled? What if season 5 is the point where Jonathan's own humanity met the divine story so powerfully? It became too much to carry alone. ChatGPT said, something broke in Jonathan Roumie during season 5. The weight of playing Jesus has never been light, but this time it felt unbearable. After 4 emotionally intense seasons, the responsibility on Jonathan's shoulders has deepened beyond acting. It's not just long filming days, harsh shooting conditions, or heavy costumes. It's the emotional burden of portraying the most sacred and scrutinized figure in human history. As filming moved toward the crucifixion storyline, the emotional pressure skyrocketed. Jonathan was no longer just performing. He was carrying the pain, betrayal, loneliness, and heartbreak that comes with being Jesus in those final days. And it wasn't just script lines anymore. It became real. It became personal. He started withdrawing from others on set, needing space to cope. Cast members noticed his silence, his exhaustion. They said he would disappear between takes, finding corners to pray, to breathe, to weep. Jenkins even admitted in a recent interview that he had to stop certain scenes midway because Jonathan's eyes would fill with tears before the camera even rolled. What's happening here isn't drama, it's devotion. Jonathan isn't playing Jesus anymore. He's surrendering himself. But that surrender is taking a toll on his body and mind. Many fans don't realize how isolating this process has become for him to remain in character. Jonathan has given up social activities, distanced himself emotionally even from close friends on set. He's not attending usual rap parties. He's not posting much online. And that silence is telling. According to a source close to the production, there was a day during the Jerusalem shooting schedule when Jonathan walked off set not in frustration, but in sheer mental fatigue. He didn't say a word, just walked away to be alone. It wasn't rebellion, which survival. The lines between man and role are blurring dangerously. And the heartbreaking irony is that the more powerful his performance becomes, the more it costs him. Season 5 isn't just a season of The Chosen, it's becoming a spiritual test for its lead actor. And now, those around him are worried. Is Jonathan okay? Will he make it through the crucifixion scenes? Or will the role that made him beloved break him completely? And yet, he keeps showing up, but he's showing up differently. Quieter, more focused, more broken. He's confessed in recent church appearances that playing Jesus has changed the way he views suffering, identity, and purpose. But what he doesn't say publicly is how deeply this transformation is hurting him behind the scenes. There are reports of him fasting for days before the Garden of Gethsemane scenes. He wanted to feel what Jesus felt: hunger, anguish, silence. And those who witnessed those moments say the pain in Jonathan's eyes wasn't acting, it was lived experience. There's a reason the production crew had to pause filming multiple times during these episodes. Jonathan needed to recover physically, emotionally, spiritually. He's giving everything, and it's taking everything from him. As season 5 pushes toward the cross, toward betrayal, blood, and death, we have to ask, how much can one actor endure before the lines between role and reality leave scars that never heal? Jonathan Roumie always knew that portraying Jesus would require more than just acting talent. It demanded his soul. But what season 5 did to him, no one saw it coming. As the weight of betrayal, sacrifice, and suffering bore down on his shoulders, something inside him began to break. This wasn't just a role anymore. It became a spiritual battle, a psychological toll that left him questioning if he could go on. Filming the arrest scene, the trial, the beatings, the crucifixion wasn't just pretending. He was living every lash, every cry, every betrayal as if they were real. And by the final days of filming, he wasn't Jonathan anymore. He was Jesus, and it broke him. As we reach the end of this powerful journey, it's clear that season 5 of The Chosen is not just a story about the Messiah. It's a story about the man who dared to embody him. The burden of stepping into that sacred role became too heavy for Roumie to carry without consequences. His physical exhaustion was visible. His voice grew hoarse. His body lost weight. His eyes told stories of sleepless nights and deep emotional grief. But what audiences will never fully understand is what it cost him on the inside. Jonathan has said in interviews that he prays before every take, asking for strength. But there comes a moment when even prayer feels like a whisper in the storm. As he filmed the most heartbreaking moments of Jesus' journey, Judas' betrayal, Peter's denial, the scourging Jonathan's own spirit trembled. After one particularly intense crucifixion scene, crew members said he sat in silence for over an hour, staring at the ground, unable to speak. And when the director called for a break, Jonathan didn't return to set. He needed time. Time to breathe. Time to separate himself from the pain he had just relived. Time to be Jonathan again. That break, unplanned and unspoken, marked the moment everyone realized the toll had been far greater than anyone expected. He had given everything: his mind, his soul, his heart. And now, it was time to step away. This wasn't weakness. It was the highest form of strength. Knowing when you've given your all. So when season 5 finally releases, fans will see scenes that will bring them to tears. But behind those tears are real ones. Behind that crown of thorns is a man who carried it for real. And as Jonathan steps back from the role he's lived for years, the question remains, how do you return to yourself after becoming the savior? Maybe you don't. Maybe part of you stays on that cross forever.